Bichara Supply Chain, highlighting and showcasing solutions for the most complex challenges facing the industry in 21st century by our team of subject matter experts and mentors. Broadcasting every week, all year round, we will present the most up-to-date series of podcasts and webinars.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bichara Supply Chain. This is Nurhadi House. We have very special guest today, Dyci. She is a supply chain consultant and working for Akili based in US. Thanks for coming and welcome to Bichara Supply Chain, Dyci.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be talking about this S&OP and maturity models. So I am very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Mm-hmm. All right. So today's topic is getting better business result by implementing an executive S&OP maturity model. But before starting, can you please brief a bit about yourself and your professional background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in the supply chain space for about 4 or 5 years now, I believe. I did a career change back in early 2016 into supply chain. Previously, I was in experiential and digital marketing. I also spent some time in Italy doing PR, sports management, and spent some time in Germany before moving back to the US. And I did some experiential marketing work with Mazda and Jaguar Land Rover, so some time in automotive before going into logistics. I was an account executive for a 3PL focused in the small business space. And then I went into consulting for end-to-end supply chain, focused on mostly planning tools, cloud-based technology. And now I am here talking to you about S&OP.
Interesting. So talking about the S&OP, many organizations have been implementing this methodology for many years. And as a result, there are more than a handful of maturity models available, including the famous one like Gartner's 5 stages of S&OP maturity model. So I wanted to touch the first question, how a better executive S&OP maturity models can help a business to improve their result.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So first of all, let's define S&OP. And as you mentioned, I'm in consulting. I think I also mentioned I'm in consulting. And what we see a lot of when we are going through kind of initial scoping conversations, and even once we get into the discovery phase with a client or a prospect, is that the definition of S&OP is not really aligned in the sense that we're not speaking the same language. So for the sake of the conversation that you and I are having now, and for the sake of the listeners, I really want to define S&OP as like that full collaborative sales and operations planning process. It is not demand planning. It is not creating your budget or AOP, your annual operating plan. It's not a one-time thing. We're talking about, like you mentioned, the Gartner model. ASCM has a model. A couple of different consulting firms that really focus in the S&OP space have different models. I've seen companies come up with their own maturity models, but this is an idea of truly collaborative and integrated planning. And it is not just, okay, we're doing our demand plan. It is not just, okay, we're going to create our A&OP. It's a monthly cadence, a weekly cadence, even daily, depending on the speed of the business and if it is needed for, that further level of sales and operations execution. So your S&OE as well. But to your question of the different benefits that that companies can realize from following a maturity model, I mean, you can Google a quick search. There are absolutely, the bullet points that anyone can pair it and say, S&OP, you probably have challenges of not connecting strategic goals, and you have ad hoc processes or your supplier response times, et cetera. And, if you implement S&OP, you will have better forecast accuracy, and you'll have a lower inventory days of supply, higher inventory terms. I mean, those are very, kind of generic. Again, a quick Google search will show you that. Mm-hmm. What I really love about adopting a maturity model and how I think it benefits the business is that it gives a framework for road mapping and continuous improvement, which are definitely key. And then it also helps have a really succinct way of integrating and collaborating within the enterprise. So 2 pieces there. As far as the road mapping and continuous improvement, what you can use that maturity model for is to really analyze where you are now. Mm-hmm. And you can see where you would want to be. Best class, best practice, supply chain excellence. Maybe you mentioned, Gartner's 5-step. Maybe you're at step 2 and you want to make it to step 5. That truly integrated business planning, connected planning, what I like to call it, aligning your representatives from product management, manufacturing, finance, supply chain analytics, sales and marketing. We've got everyone in this collaborative process that you are planning over, like these 3 kind of highlighted planning horizons of daily, weekly, and then monthly for like that 3 to 18 month planning horizon. And then like your 2 to 5 year long-term planning, those 3 different planning horizons. So having that maturity model gives you a roadmap to be able to understand, we're here today, this is where we want to be, and now let's get everyone together and kind of come up with a timeline, come up with next steps. What is going to be our steps to get from phase 1 to phase 2? What are going to be the steps to get from phase 2 to phase 3? Etc. So it gives you a framework to be able to benchmark against, and then also to have a guidance. Because otherwise it's just kind of like, oh, well, we want to do S&OP better, but what does that mean? So it gives you kind of some guidelines there. And then as far as the other piece of that truly integrated planning, so I have seen, listening to your guys' podcast, listening to other podcasts, just doing readings. I mean, right now, collaboration is like the key word. Collaboration, let's collaborate. And let's integrate our different functional areas. Let's all be on the same page. So I think that where we are right now is that we all realize we need to be doing that in supply chain. We all realize that we cannot move forward to achieve supply chain excellence, to deliver for the customer, to make supply chain a value center instead of a cost center in the eyes of a business. We cannot do that without collaborating. We can't have procurement planning on their silo. We can't have logistics planning in a silo. We can't have inventory planning in a silo. We have to collaborate. But where we are, I think, failing in the supply chain industry in general, and I shouldn't say failing, where we're having the challenge is actually executing. So the idea is great. Yes, let's collaborate. But there are even people who might say, oh yeah, we collaborate all the time. Like I send an email before the plan is executed. Like, yeah, on demand, I come up with my demand plan and then I send it to the supply team. So that's totally collaborating. Like that's not collaborating. That's you just giving something to the supply team and saying, okay, figure it out, make this work because this is the demand plan we have. But in that maturity model, you can look and see let's stick with Gartner, but that, that phase 2, you're still siloed in function. You're still having siloed functional solutions. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to step 3, you're integrating. And then when you get to step 4, that's when you're really collaborating. So you're using technology to enable connectivity. You're supporting mature processes. You're sitting everybody, those different representatives, again, in the room monthly, continuously, from beginning to end, and not just based on this project, but literally it becomes a part of the business culture. It becomes part of how we plan, is that there's a representative from every relevant department. ASCM recently released something that I really liked this summer, or maybe it was later spring, that I like to use, and that is their connected, I want to say it's called Dyci, and I really want to look it up right now on my computer. But it basically, what it tells you is how all of the different supply chain capabilities are connected. So if you choose one capability, it quickly shows you, okay, but don't forget about all of these other capabilities that may be affected by any change you make here. So it helps you remember, okay, I need this person at the table also, and this person at the table also, but not just at the beginning, not just at the end, continuous collaboration. So that's a long-winded way of saying the takeaway is maturity models really give us a framework and guidance for improving our S&OP planning processes. And it also allows us to leverage a tool that will help us truly achieve integration and collaboration, and not just talking about it.
Awesome. Interesting. Other thing I would like to ask is what are main challenges we may have and how to overcome them, Dyci?
The challenges in terms of actually adopting a maturity model and kind of implementing an S&OP process.
Yep.
So the biggest challenge I have seen is that it doesn't come from the top. So I mentioned that the S&OP planning process really has to become part of like the business culture. It's part of the way we plan. Right. So what I've seen is that the sponsors who want to implement this S&OP process don't necessarily have the executive leadership support. And not to say that executive leadership doesn't agree that it should happen, but they don't make it a priority in the sense of we all have different competing objectives. We all have, like every department, every person, we're all being pulled in so many different ways. Anyone in supply chain will tell you that there are so many different competing interests between departments, and who's going to be accountable for this, who's going to be accountable for that. And what ends up happening is that people have good intentions, and everyone says, yes, we want to make this S&OP process happen. We want to go from react to orchestrate. We want to be at that integrated business planning, connected planning level. It all sounds great, blue skies, green fields, but when it actually comes to executing on it, it's tedious. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it, but it really comes down to the challenge of being able to execute on ideas. And the companies that I have seen that overcome this challenge have a senior leader that is accountable for the S&OP process. Yep. So it's not, someone who decided, someone in demand planning or someone in procurement or someone in logistics who decided we should do this. And now, in addition to their day job, they are also in charge of planning all of these different meetings, making sure all of the dashboards and data are ready to go for the meetings, et cetera. They can't take that on in addition to their current role. And depending on the size of the organization, you might need a committee, you might need a team. But the point is that someone at senior leadership is held accountable for it. And the other senior leaders, because that means that of those departments, then their senior leaders are making sure that everyone is attending meetings, and they're making sure that everyone is preparing for meetings and are not just showing up, but actually arriving prepared with their different insights and their analysis of what has happened since the last meeting. So not just being there, but also being present. And that really comes down from senior leadership, because people have so many things to do that they will prioritize what they are told to prioritize. So if their senior leaders tell them the S&OP planning cycle is a priority, you need to be ready for it, then they'll prioritize that. Otherwise, it gets pushed down to, the back burner, and then S&OP just kind of doesn't happen because no one feels like it's a priority to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Interesting. So, since you have been working for a consulting company for many years, could you please speak up a few example how it can be implemented, Dyci?
So I definitely think the first step, and if you've read anything that I've written blog post wise, or just listened to other interviews and talks, I'm really, really big on people. I'm really, really big on preparing people. I'm really, really big on workforce planning in terms of making sure you have the right skill set within a person on the team. And if you don't have someone with that skill set, either hiring in or providing them with the training to make sure that they are prepared. I really truly believe that the first step is, of course, deciding senior leadership, which maturity model are we going to follow? Is it going to be Gardner? Is it going to be something from ASCM? Is it going to be a hodgepodge of things that we as a company look at our strategic goals, look at our business objectives, and then decide, kind of where we are now and where we want to be. And then based off of that, we create a maturity model and a roadmap. Just considering best practices for S&OP, so that's the first step. The second step is getting the team members together. And I would absolutely say that top accountable person that I mentioned, like get them on the team. And by on the team, I mean, get them hired in your company, or give someone that's in your company, give them that role and make them accountable for building out the S&OP process. Give them, but not even making them accountable, give them, the power. Give them the power to be able to say, hey, you declined this meeting. These are really important. Is this something that we need to reschedule so that we can accommodate your schedule? Did you decline just because you didn't feel like coming? But giving them the power to kind of light a fire and to make sure that, again, those representatives that we mentioned, product management, manufacturing, supply chain analytics, finance, sales and marketing, making sure everyone is in the room and making sure that they are prepared. So it just really needs to be led by senior management and making sure that you stick with it. And that's just the biggest thing. I see so many people, especially with the software implementations, because right now companies are in Excel. That's actually a good one that just came to my mind. Get out of Excel. That's a way to really to get your S&OP going. Get out of Excel because it will, using a cloud-based solution will make your planning process faster. It will allow, even during meetings and right before meetings, it will allow the representatives and planners to, kind of scenario plan and have different ideas ready to go for the meeting. Because otherwise, using Excel to plan across different dimensions of your business, up your hierarchy, down your hierarchy, across different geographical regions, across different sales channels. I mean, it's impossible to keep up a monthly cadence if you are trying to rework Excel models, multiple times. I mean, you can't do it. You just don't have the time. There's not enough time to rework those models fast enough to keep up with the pace of the business and also to keep up with the pace of a true S&OP cycle. So getting out of Excel, adopting some cloud-based tools to really support the team, and some BI tools that allow for, quick dashboarding and charts as well, because that takes time. Making PowerPoints takes time, and making slides takes time. So if you are adopting an S&OP maturity model and you are putting more work on people in terms of more meetings and in terms of having them prepare for these meetings, then you also need to give them a tool that will help them to do that faster. You can't say, okay, in addition to your current job, we're now adding on this S&OP process, so just figure it out. Like, it just doesn't work that way. And I see that happen a lot. The companies who are successful realize that people need to be supported in a new change, and it's nearly impossible to say, okay, you're currently working this many hours a week doing your regular job, and now on top of that, we want you to add another 10 to 15 hours a week doing this part of, your job. So really making sure that you are supporting your people, you're listening to your people. They're the ones in the weeds. They're the ones, making all these decisions, and they're the ones that are doing the actual work. So while the S&OP process has to be led by senior management and has to be sponsored at the executive level, you also need to make sure that as you're coming up with your process and determining the maturity model that you're going to adopt, and a roadmap and timeline, et cetera, that you're considering all of your stakeholders and you're communicating to them and you're making them feel included, because otherwise you come up with a process. Maybe it seems great to you, but it works only in theory, not actually in practice. And then it doesn't get adopted. It's like technology. If you don't think about your end user or your customer, if you don't think about your customer, your internal customer, then, you kind of end up just with a tool that falls flat. And the same thing can happen with your S&OP process or maturity model adoption.
Awesome. Super. All right. So before we close today's talk, do you still have any final thoughts or key takeaways from today's discussion, Dyci?
Yes, definitely key takeaways. Always people. Love your people. Love your people. Support your people. Don't pull them in 50 different directions without giving them support to be able to adequately manage those 50 different directions. Make sure you have a person in your supply chain that is your supply chain planning, your executive leadership, your senior leadership that is responsible for your S&OP process. And they are, a visionary. They are leading the charge. They are supporting people. I think now that I'm kind of reflecting on key takeaways, I want to make sure that I did not describe that kind of S&OP director as like a dictator. They are not the dictator to come through and say, follow the S&OP process, but they are, a senior leader that supports the rest of the S&OP team, and just making sure that they're driving for that strategic business objectives and making sure that the S&OP process continues to align with the business goals. So I would say people, always people. Take care of your people, get people prepared, train them, communicate with them, make them feel part of any changes that are coming, and you'll see that the process will get adopted, and you will start to see absolutely the business benefits.
At Bichara Supply Chain, we are committed to driving global perspective to embrace technological adaptation in improving process efficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Bichara Supply Chain. And stay tuned for the latest updates. To learn more, visit our website www.bicharasupplychain.com. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next episode.